Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 25 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. Today we are covering Job chapter 22 through 25, and I really want to just focus on these first two chapters, verse 22 and 23. You know, again, Eliphaz is at it again. This is the third round, really, of Job's friends, his frenemies, trying to convince him that he is a sinner. And, you know, Eliphaz, each time he has a portion of truth. A lot of Eliphaz's words, if he was speaking as an evangelist to a great crowd of people, they might have some relevance. But he's speaking to one individual, one person who he knows, one person who is greatly suffering and needs comfort, needs a friend, needs people just to sit there with him, to pray with him, to encourage him. And Job's not getting that. He's not getting that from anyone. And so Eliphaz, again, he starts off with this accusation, this thing of trying to convince Job that he is just a dirty, rotten, filthy sinner, that there must be secret sins somewhere there. And he even starts off in verse 2 really by asking if a man can profit God. Like, well, you know, what's God going to get out of you? And Eliphaz continues to argue, basically saying, you know, that you've mistreated people, saying that you have dealt harshly with the poor, with the hungry, with the thirsty. You've not given people the things that they needed. And he's even going to go on to basically say that you've neglected the widows, you've neglected the orphans. You know, it's like this shotgun blast of one of these things is going to stick. One of these things is going to hold to you. And, you know, I mean, how many times have you walked past a needy person? Or how many times have you judged a person that was asking for help and said, oh, well, they're really going to take that money and buy alcohol or buy cigarettes, or they're gonna use that money in an ill way. I remember hearing this story before of a beggar that's on the street asking for money, and a wealthy man gives the beggar some money, and later the wealthy man's at a nice restaurant in town, and he sees the beggar eating at the same restaurant, and the wealthy man goes over and says to the beggar, how dare you spend this money this way? But is not the rich man in the same restaurant? You know, I'm just saying, you know, people are quick to judge situations and outcomes. What if the restaurant owner fed the beggar a free meal every day? So I'm just saying, let's think of the situation. And Job's friends are just continuously accusing him. Now, really, in this charge, the second speaker, he's going to say very little. The third's not going to really address it at all. I think by this point it's kind of like, well, all right. You know, and by the time we get to chapter 23, again, Job is refusing to accept these false accusations, these charges that his friend is laying upon him. You know, he even just really ignores a lot of what Eliphaz has to say, but still launches in on his own defense. I know maybe to this point you're becoming weary of, like, wow, this is just a constant back and forth, and like, I could almost hear someone saying, why so much? Why are we, you know, in chapter 25 and still basically dealing with the same issue of the friends charging him? And someone say, you know, I get the point, but do we really? we still find ourselves in this point where somebody is sick or suffering, and you're like, well, you just got to wonder what they did. And I think that this passage is not only given in full so that we receive the full account of what was happening with Job and the charges that his friends are laying before him, but that we learn that much more how we need to be careful, how we need to be comforters rather than accusers. I know there's many times in my own life I would have greatly profited just from having someone listen to me rather than hearing just a few words or being so fast to offer advice. And yet I know I'm in the same boat. There's many times that it would have been better if I had been a listener and a prayer and a comforter rather than being so fast to give advice as well. Let us seek God's guidance. Let us be willing to take on the harness of and I'm meaning like how a horse would have his harness on him to be driven in the direction that the driver wants to go. Let us be that beast of burden for the Lord's will. Let us take up our cross and follow him. The story of Job is so challenging in many ways, and yet the Lord is there. The Lord is not going to allow Job to remain in the furnace any longer than he can withstand. And I'm not meaning this in that Job had impurities, meaning sin in his life, but there are always ways that we can be better. And I think Job is there, and not only is he becoming a better person in the end, but his testimony stands for us, that he could have cursed God, and many would have at this point just said, well, but not many who, again, have built their faith on the rock would have just walked away. It really just stands as a wonderful testimony of a man of faith, a man who believes in God really more than he even believes in himself, and trusts God. And yes, he has some questions. Yes, I think even has some doubt, not in God's existence, not in God's power, not in God's grace, but I think it comes back to this, well, we're going to see it as we get a little bit further on, but just, Lord, why? And we may not always have the answers of the events as they unfold, but remember that God is King. And as I say, He's going to allow us to only be in the furnace for as long as we can withstand. And if you're like, well, you don't know what I've gone through. Well, the Lord knows. The Lord knows it all. And that's why really, for me, I'm taking away even more that I need to be even a better listener. And I need to be better in not being so fast to throw out advice. For some people, they're more of an introvert, and it's hard for them to stand and speak. I'm kind of that extrovert, and it's hard not to speak. So, there's different personalities, but we definitely need to have grace for each other. I do hope that you're having a wonderful day. Until tomorrow, God bless.